and unmute, and *9 to raise your hand.
So I'm now *6 to unmute and mute. Okay, so am I muted right now? No, I'm talking, right? Okay. Help. Okay.
So folks that are online, if you're not a community board member, we're going to ask you just to type your name into the chat field so that we can have attendance that way. We are recording this meeting, and the video and the chat box gets recorded. So those of you who are not community board members, just please type your name into the chat field.
Hello.
Hey, you're on.
How's it going, guys?
Okay. We're going to give a few minutes since this is a new format to get everybody to sign in via this Zoom meeting.
Again, for anyone who might have just joined us, if you are not a community board member, we're asking that you just type your name into the chat box. That's how we're going to be taking attendance for non-community board members. Also, we are recording this meeting, so just be aware of that.
Ryan, are you on?
Ryan is on, I believe.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get her.
Can I ask the person with the 347 phone number that ends in 829 just to let us know who you are so that we can know if it's a board member or a community member?
Jamal Phillips, District 3 Manager for Parks.
Awesome. Hi, Jamal. Hope you're doing well.
Hey, how you guys doing? Good, good, good.
Hello, hello. Am I on here?
Yeah, Carlin, we got you. Thank you.
Hey, Colin.
Good morning, everyone. All right, I think I got this thing working.
Yeah.
Muting.
So we're just going to ask everyone to keep themselves muted until it's your time to talk so that we can decrease on the amount of background noise. And again, just a reminder, we are recording this meeting. And if you just joined us, if you're not a member of the community board, if you can just type your name into the chat box, that's how we're taking attendance in lieu of you signing in the sign-in sheet, which we would do at an in-person meeting. Can I ask the person with the 347 phone number that ends in 798 just to identify yourself so that we know who you are? Thank you. For those of you joining us on the telephone, using the telephone for your audio, it's *6 to mute or unmute yourself, and it's *9 to raise your hand.
All right, we're going to start in a couple of minutes. I just want to verify that I'm just looking at the list of folks that's here. Ryan, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Appreciate the fact that you're going to take minutes during this. I know it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Luckily, we only have one agenda item. Well, we have a few agenda items, but one agenda item might require some note taking. As Michael had said, the attendance for non-community board members is taken by the message feature, so there's no need to worry about that. But can you see everyone that's?
I'm seeing everybody's name except for, no, I have everybody's name and I've done attendance. The only person I'm missing, I haven't seen yet, is Kay.
Oh, that's right. Kay said she could not make it.
Okay.
All right. So before we get into the agenda items, I just want to go over a couple of things. And just to make this meeting as efficient as we possibly can, understand that the camera's live. So if you have your camera on, we can see you. So everything that you do, we can also see. So just be aware of that. That includes, if you're going to get up and leave, or if you're going to do something, we can see you. If you need to do something, please turn off your camera. Just like a regular meeting, we'd like your attention. We're going to try and keep this as brief as possible. This is a new format for most of us, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on a lot of issues, but we'd like your attention for the full term of the meeting. We understand everyone's home and there's issues, and we have pets and children and family, but we should be able to get through this fairly quickly. I'd like to thank Michael. He's on production. He'll be handling most of the technical aspects of this. So if you need or need a question answered about the technical portion, Michael is running production. And also to Ryan, who's taking notes for this Zoom meeting, our first Parks and Waterfront meeting. For members of the public, we're going to use the raise hand feature to ask questions, and that will happen after the community board members have asked the questions. I don't see that many folks from that are not community board members, so I anticipate we'll be able to get through all your questions. That being said, Ryan, do you want to go ahead? I'm going to have you take attendance. This is a vote on, it would be February's minutes because we did not meet in March. I know everyone read them and memorized them, so we're going to go ahead and vote on the approval of those minutes. And Michael, what's the best way to do this?
I would suggest, since we're a relatively small committee, that we possibly do it as a roll call vote. So the person's name can be called and then they can just unmute themselves, say yay or nay, and then mute themselves again.
Okay. Ryan, you want to go ahead and do that?
Sure. Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Kay Webster. David Adams.
Yes.
Yaron Altman.
Hey, yay.
Carlin Chan.
Yes. Yes.
Ryan Gillum, yes. Valentina Jones.
Yes.
Michael Marino,
Yes.
Carolyn Ratcliffe,
Yes.
Robin Chattel,
Yes.
Josefina Velez. Josefina?
I know she's on.
Yes, I don't know if I'm muted. Hello?
You're on now. We hear you.
Okay, I'm going to unmute myself now. I'm here.
Great. And you vote yes on the minutes?
You're talking to me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
All right. The next thing, I just want to read something that Parks had, or actually from, well, it's from Parks and DDC. Just a statement as to what's going on with the ESCR project. And I'm just going to read directly from what they sent to us. DDC does not have major updates to report on ESCR this month. Despite the coronavirus crisis, DDC has been able to keep up the ESCR program on schedule and is currently on time and moving towards procurement and contract specification review phase. Since the city committed to deferring the relatively small early works package and compost yard relocation to the fall, no major construction activities will be taking place this spring. We will keep you posted in the near term as conditions or project developments arise. We appreciate your understanding during these unprecedented times and look forward to continuing our working relationship. But that's all we have for ESCR. There's no more updates. We will probably get a more robust update next month, but that's where we stand with the ESCR program. There shouldn't be any questions about that because that's all we really have. Next is a presentation from Parks. And I see a couple of, I see Raymond from, I think Raymond from Parks.
Jorge is giving the presentation.
He is giving the presentation?
Yeah, he has co-host ability now.
Right. Michael, are we going to share the screen after he begins, or let's give him a chance to introduce himself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jorge Prado. I'm the Director of Architecture at Parks. Raymond Young is also present. He's manager for this particular project that we'll be presenting tonight. Presenting tonight is the Tompkins Square Park Field House or Comfort Station. It's a reconstruction, and I don't know for certain that I'm showing you my screen or you're going to put the presentation up on your screen.
We can do either way. If you have it on your screen already, you can share your screen or I can share mine, whatever's easier for you.
I'm not a master of this, so if I just put my screen up and then click on the green button that says share, is that enough?
It is. I'll do my screen and you can just tell me when to scroll down to the next slide.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Hi, Michael. This is David Adams. I think if you go on the what Trevor sent us, there's a you can get this papers from the that they sent into on the community board from the email. And you can follow it on your own computer on a separate screen or something.
Yeah, it is. We did link the presentation to the meeting information on the community board website. So if my screen is being shared now, so everybody should be able to see the presentation, but if you want to open it yourself or look at it later, it is linked on our website.
Okay, I'm shutting off now. Bye.
I didn't ask everybody, but I assume you can hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the presentation. I guess I'll get started. Tompkins Square Park Fieldhouse Reconstruction. Everybody knows where it's located. It's in Tompkins Square Park on the sort of northern edge of the drive-through. The budget is $5.6 million from the mayor's office, and the project is roughly 2,300 square feet. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, yeah. So the goals of the project are to upgrade the existing restrooms to bring them up to current code, to upgrade parks maintenance and operations space, to add a first aid, lifeguard, locker room spaces to the building, reconstruct the interiors, which in this case are 4 baths and space and a locker room, to clean and partially repoint the exterior brick, to do new windows and doors as required, and provide new utilities, including an oil to gas conversion. Next slide, please. We know where we're located. We're in Manhattan. We're in Tompkins Square Park. We're on the northern edge of the drive-through, as I said. Next slide, please. We are not in a flood hazard zone. Next slide, please. We're surrounded by rather tight mixed use and residential buildings. Next slide, please. We are within a mile or 10-minute walking distance from a number of other facilities around Sarah Roosevelt Park and so on. Some of these parks have facilities. Most of the parks don't have the extensive facilities that Tompkins Square Park has. Therefore, we're happy to be taking this project on at this point. Next slide, please. This is an aerial shot giving you a sense of where the field house is. And the field house is obviously the colonnaded building that is the entryway to the spray showers in the courtyard beyond. Next slide, please. This is the current tree removal plan. You'll notice there's one tree removal due to design considerations and one tree removal due to a poor condition of two trees to be removed, both of which are in bad condition. One of them is tucked into the left edge of the building in this slide. Next slide, please. These are just some general elevation views to the building, trying to capture the entire front elevation on both photographs. Next slide. And these are rear, oh, this is still the front elevation of the building. Just the two bays on either side of the loggia. Next slide, please. This is the enclosed fenced-in area on the eastern building. This will be removed, modified, and cleaned up considerably during this project. Next slide, please. These are views inside the loggia. We will be doing some work in here to clean up the facility. Slide. And these are the rear views of the loggia and the access ramp with the Slocum Memorial fountain behind, or I should say in front of us, and the building is there. Next slide, please. More just context photographs showing the boys and girls rooms. Next slide, please. And this is a basic roof of the building as it exists now, but pointing out the existing ramp is not ADA compliant currently. It's too short, it doesn't have an intermediate landing, and it doesn't have the necessary curbs. Next slide, please. So this is the roof plan with some of the proposed work. We'll be putting some existing antenna will be remaining. We'll be putting some penetrations for new vents as required to achieve the reconfiguration inside. We'll be doing a new ADA ramp, which we'll see closer later at the rear of the building. This will be a switchback ramp to allow for the full ADA compliant slope requirements and for the intermediate landings. Next slide, please. So this is the existing ground floor plan. 2 bathrooms on the left, the women's room and the girls, and 2 bathrooms on the right. I guess maybe it's backwards. The women's room on the right and the girls' room on the right, and the men's room and the boys' room on the left. You'll also notice there is office space and locker room space on the left or western wing of the building. On the eastern wing of the building, there's an office space, and there's also a mechanical space with the stair wrapping around it. And in the center, of course, is the loggia, and this is the existing concrete ramp that we are addressing in this project as well. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed plan, and we've both plans on one slide so you can see them side by side, but we were asked to make the plans larger, so we've had to put each slide on an individual slide. It's not as easy for you to see the differences, so we might flip back and forth a couple of times to show you. but I'll just tell you what some of the obvious differences are. If you notice on this plan, the new men's entrance on the left is to the furthest western edge of the building, and the new women's entrance on the right is to the furthest eastern end of the eastern wing of the building. These two entrances are essentially being relocated. If you flip back the slide one more time, you'll notice that the current configuration shows the men's entrance tucked in next to the office space and the women's entrance tucked office space on the eastern wing. We're sliding those entrances out to allow us to reach space to ability of a program inside the building. Slide forward, please. So now you'll where the men's entry door was and where the women's entry door were originally. These are now interior spaces on the west wing of the building. This will be now the reconfigured locker room for the M&O staff that operate out of this facility and also that operate within the area of this facility. There will be a bathroom there, which is currently a reconfiguration of an existing bathroom, turning the door towards the locker room. The men's room will be the same number of stalls, if less sinks. Switch back to the previous. So this one has it has 3 toilets and 3 and 4 sinks. If you switch forward, we are compressing it a little bit, so we now have 1 large ADA stall which is compliant. We still have 2 sinks, not 4. We have 2 urinals and 3 toilets in the men's facility. So we're losing 2 sinks, but we're gaining an ADA compliant bathroom, which is the goal of the project. The same condition is exactly duplicated in the women's wing to the right. You'll see that the doorway has been shifted. There is now additional space in there for the lifeguard locker room. You'll notice that what used to be a mechanical room, which is just adjacent to the new ADA ramp, that interior space is no longer a mechanical space. That'll be a first aid office, first aid room. The office below that will be more or less in the same configuration it is now, a little bit smaller. And the boys and girls rooms, if you switch back to the previous slide, you'll see in the boys' room you have 2 stalls, 2 urinals, 2 sinks, and in the girls' room you have 3 stalls and 2 sinks. 4 stalls and 2 sinks. Switch forward now. You'll notice that these numbers stay the same to a great measure. I think we lose one stall in each bathroom, but we gain an ADA stall. And you'll also notice, if you go back to the previous slide, where there used to be an adjoining stair between the boys' room and that intermediate utility room, and between the girls' room and that intermediate utility room, we have now eliminated the stair. We've tried to level this this area. So if you go forward, you'll notice that there is now a janitor's closet within each bathroom, and so those janitor's closets will be used by staff to maintain them. In fact, each bathroom room now has its own janitor's closet to allow for to avoid having to move mops and move things around the building perimeter as we're washing the spaces. This way, staff can sort of walk into the bathroom, they can clean the bathroom, leave their materials there, go to the next one, and so on, without seriously impacting the public's use of the building. You'll also notice that in the western wing of the building, the bathroom space is now open space, which is sort of a larger sort of open muster space that allows for parks staff, M&O, and other people to come in and to essentially do muster in the morning and to have meetings as required to maintain the property in its rightful place. You'll notice that same sister space on the east wing, again, is the first aid station and the small office space and the downstairs to the mechanical room in the basement. You'll also notice that the loggia remains mostly the same, except to make it compliant, we've introduced the switchback stair, which will obviously impact some of the steps that used to go up. If you go back one slide, you'll notice here that the existing concrete ramp only took one bay of the loggia, and you had the continuous steps that ran across the back of the loggia. You'll notice that if you move forward one, we'll lose those steps and we'll put the switchback stair in that area. So we'll essentially occupy 3 bays of the loggia space. On the unoccupied area where the steps will remain, we have to introduce handrails. So we're putting handrails in place there. This configuration may or may not change slightly depending on whether we can get away with just using one handrail per bay, as it were. But the distances are code compliant, so we may not have that ability. But essentially, that's the major change here, that ramp in the back. Now it's compliant. We had to go to this switchback stair as a way to impeding circulation between the Slocum Memorial Fountain and the ramp itself. If you go back one slide, you'll see here that the area between the ramp and Slocum Memorial is actually quite tight. And so we didn't really feel that that was an appropriate use of space, and it was cutting off circulation east and west across the back of the building. Go forward one slide, please. So we're able to recapture some of that circulation space, and that's going to be important for us because as we get further into the presentation, you'll see how we modified the fencing on the eastern edge of the building to allow for more circulation. And so we wanted to make sure that we were sort of reestablishing the circulation corridor back there. We can move forward one slide. So this is kind of a larger version of the plan. It's just compressed. We cut the loggia out. So here you can see more clearly the conditions and the things we were discussing a moment ago. I'll just go through them briefly again. Left to right, west wing, we have the men's room with the door on the western edge of the building. There is a slight loss of fixtures here. With the loss of fixtures, we're gaining an ADA compliant restroom, and we're allowing the main entry that used to go into that empty vestibule space to become a usable space for lockers for the M&O staff that operate out of this facility. The boys' room in the back, you'll notice we've eliminated the stair. We recaptured that space as a janitor's closet. Again, we've provided an ADA, which is pretty similar to what we have now, a stall, and nothing else has changed. Obviously, these will be all new finishes. If you look at the office space and the M&O wall storage area, this is now one open space. This will allow for mustering of staff in mornings and during meeting hours, and also for the volunteer staff and seasonal staff as required. To the right of that, you'll notice the first aid room that we were talking about before. That currently is a mechanical room. It has a lot of pipes in it that we're relocating to the cellar. We're able to recapture this at the request of the lifeguards to service pool needs in season. And you'll notice the lifeguard locker room is just beneath that. And there's also a lifeguard additional locker room and storage to the right where the old vestibule used to be. So you'll see it's just a more flexible use of space. You've created some locking areas for the lifeguard to store their stuff, and that's very critical for them. The women's room is a mirror of the men's room, except here we have 3 toilet fixtures. We don't have any urinals. We have 2 sinks. This is our standard complement for most of our standard comfort stations. We have a janitor's closet. The girls' rooms, again, 3 and 2, which is our standard, and we have a janitor's closet there as well for maintaining those spaces. Next slide, please. This slide will sort of start to discuss some of those changes to the fenced-in area east of the building, which is quite an eyesore and has always been something we wanted to address. This is the perfect project to do so. So the fences as they exist currently are in the top slide. You'll see that dotted line is a chain link fence. Currently from the pool, which is just off the top of the screen, down to the building, there's an 8-foot chain link fence that sort of turns the corner and closes off that entry to that rear garden area from the eastern portion of the park. All of that will be gone. There's also an 8-foot chain link fence that runs between that chain link fence and the front of the building. And it sort of closes off the tree there. It sort of isolates the tree in its own little space with an existing 4-foot high steel fence around it. Not easily seen here is there's also an 8-foot chain link fence at the southern edge of that enclosure, which is just behind a 4-foot steel fence. That will be cleaned up as well. We'll be removing both of those. And if you look below, we'll be removing all the chain link and all the 4-foot fences. We'll be installing one clean 7-foot fence, leaving access to that yard exactly as it currently is, with a small single-man door from the western edge of the entry to the double flip garage doors, which allow for vehicular access to service the park. You'll notice that we are now taking the tree inside the 7-foot fence. We will protect the tree, obviously the tree will remain, but that yard now is increasing slightly to the east, but it's decreasing from the north. So we're reestablishing the circulation corridor behind the building, and the pool, which is just north, or I should say, yes, just north of this plan, the fencing will remain the same, and the current setup every season of setting a table up there for security will be done the same way in future. So we don't anticipate any changes there. It's a little confusing, but I'm sure we can come back to this as soon as we get through the presentation. Let's go to the next slide, please. So these are some elevations that we'll start to see here. So the elevation you're looking at the top is an elevation of that chain link fenced enclosure area. You'll notice that the chain link is there, and there's also the 4-foot steel fence, which I mentioned. All of that's being removed, and it'll be replaced by a single 7-foot standard steel fence, painted black to match the rest of the park. You'll notice also in the elevation immediately to the left of that, that's the bathroom bay. That area will change. We will add a door furthest east. That door will be the main entrance to the women's room. And you'll notice that a window will replace the existing door on the left side of that bay, and that will be a window in that flexible locker space for the lifeguards. In addition, there'll be new windows throughout, so you'll notice the window to the left is also a new window to replace the existing windows. These windows, we're trying to take them to the same sill height as were original to the building. So you'll notice that the existing window is a lot smaller than the proposed window. And this is something that we like to do to bring our buildings back to their original condition. So we're really taking that attitude here. Next slide, please. And you'll notice similar condition on the western wing. That's an existing 7-foot steel fence on the left side, and that remains. So now the building will be flanked by these 7-foot steel fences. You'll notice that the bathroom bay, same condition. We're essentially replicating the elevation here that was on the women's side. The main entry to the men's door is that door to the left of the wing. It will be surrounded, as the women's room door will be, with a new surround to match the existing detailing of the building. The current door is being converted into a window, and that window will look into the M&O locker space immediately behind it to allow natural light to filter into that space. Those 3 windows that you currently see were not original to the building. Those 3 windows were built at some point, so we are going back to trying to mimic the original building, and we're putting in larger windows to lower the sill height and to allow maximum flexibility. Somebody has a raised hand.
That was an error.
Okay, no problem. We can come back. Again, this wing will mirror the wing to the right, with the obvious differences that here we have 3 windows in the in the office area of the building, whereas on the previous slide, we saw one window, and those again are to match the existing condition of the building. Next slide, please. This is in the rear now, and we're looking at this thing facing south. So this is the west end of the building, the west, yes, end of the building. You'll notice here, similar conditions. This shows the 7-foot fence that's existing. It will remain in the new design. This shows that the current gray tile condition in that niche will be replaced, and the louver will be removed, and we will introduce new anti-graffiti tile here as well to match the current tile as best we can, and to give us maximum ability to maintain that niche, which is a very attractive graffiti target, we know, and so we're trying to maintain its flexibility. You'll also notice that we're removing a metal louver, or we're adding a metal louver, I should say, just to the left of that niche, between the bathroom bay and the main bay. That little louver there is necessary. Most of the other louvers are going out of the roof. You'll also notice that the window here is being enlarged, similar to the enlargement on the front of the building. In this case, it's one window, so we're replacing one larger window. Next slide, please. And this is the east wing, also showing the ADA ramp. So if you start here left to right, the chain link fencing, as we had talked about before, is gone. The 7-foot steel fence is in place. And by the way, we haven't mentioned the fact that all of the sheds that were back there have been removed, so those sheds will not come back. There is currently, the eastern edge of the building, a movable storage container. That movable storage container will be pulled away from the building across the walk, and that may end up being its permanent location on the other side, or it may move somewhere else. We would have to negotiate the final location of that, but it will remain away from the building to prevent people from climbing on the building. So back to this elevation, replacement of the ceramic tiles with graffiti resistant or anti-graffiti tiles within the niche at the bench. The same louver added here to allow for installation of the interiors, and the same larger window as before. The ramp, you'll notice, is a little more obviously conspicuous. It's a larger ramp. It is unfortunately what is required to meet the compliance of the ADA. We will have our standard pipe rail handrails. We will have our standard concrete ramp with curbs, and everything will be done according to code and compliant. And it will allow for, as I said before, that larger area of circulation between the ramp and the memorial. Next slide, please. And here we are in the loggia on the right, and at the western end of the building on the left. So you'll notice at the existing west elevation, this is in the west wing of the building. That 7-foot steel fence is existing. That's the fence that leads to the multi-purpose play area. Those windows will be replaced, and they will be matching windows to the new ones we're putting on the front and back elevations. You'll notice to the right is the loggia. So the loggia door will be replaced. It'll match the new doors going into the other areas of the building, as will the entry to the girls' room immediately to the left there. You'll see that the door is also going to be replaced to match all of the other new doors as well. And this is sort of a cut section through the ramp, so you don't really see the ramp very much, but it's there. You'll notice the difference if you look at the existing section, that you can see the steps going down. So we've cut it through the ramp, so obviously those steps no longer will exist in those 3 bays. So that in circumstance, but we thought it was the best solution. You'll notice that the new ramp actually stays within the line of the building beyond. And that was our stated goal, to sort of maintain that sort of circulation corridor as it was originally intended, as best we could. Next slide, please. This is now the loggia facing east, and the loggia facing east and the existing east elevation. This is again, this is the elevation where we currently have that chain link enclosure. That chain link enclosure, which is only visible in the upper right-hand screen along the left edge. All that chain link will go. That's the 7-foot high steel fence. That's the gate there. You'll also notice there's a new gas meter here. This is during the oil to gas conversion, we'll be removing the existing tank from the buried area. We'll be putting the gas meter in. It will be always behind the enclosed area, so it will be secure from public tampering. You'll also notice that to provide some cooling of the building, we are putting some outdoor condenser units in that work yard, as we're calling it. And we're putting them below the replaced windows, which will allow for greater light into the bathrooms. And again, on the left, the lower elevation shows the new doors, both inside the loggia and at the boys' room, to replace the existing doors there. Next slide, please. This is kind of a cut plan section of the loggia, just to give you a close-up of what we're talking about. So left to right, you'll notice some security lighting is going both at the back of the building and at the front of the building. You'll notice that there is a new brick pavers will be put into place in the loggia itself to replace the chopped up patchwork flooring that's currently there. You'll notice the handrails that I mentioned earlier. We're going to look if we can make any adjustments to these. Maybe we can reduce it to 1, but we think this is probably the minimum we have to provide, but we're going to look at that. It will get no worse than this. It might improve from this if we can manage to put a couple of these handrails. And then the ramp, of course, is here. You'll go into a flat landing, you'll go down a slope, you'll arrive at the turn landing, and then you'll go down the last leg to the actual plaza where the memorial is located. Next slide, please. And these are the materials that we're talking about, stainless steel for ADA signage and kick plates, for custom pull and lock boxes. Painted black, some of these things, so we won't have a lot of stainless steel to lock boxes. They'll be painted black, but they'll be stainless steel. Red brick pavers, condensing units, anti-graffiti ceramic tile for those niches in the rear of the building, and the lighting, which will be industrial grade guard sconce to prevent the breakage. ADA signage, and the actual natural concrete for the ramp itself. And I believe there's one more slide. And we will be putting in our standard DPR pipe handrail at the ramp. We'll be putting in double hung windows with the divided lights to mimic the historic multi-light windows. DPR standard steel fencing, 7 feet to match the western edge of the building. We will be replanting a tree, and that will be the Prunus okami. And that's pretty much the project. I know it's a lot. Sorry I rushed through that.
Thank you, Jorge. No, it's a lot, but we've seen many presentations, so we are used to quite extensive reviews of everything that Parks does for renovations and replacements.
Trevor, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. I can't see you, though.
Can't see me?
No, I can't see you.
The hell do I press to so you can see me?
The video icon.
What is that?
There's a video icon.
Video icon. I don't see it.
A computer or a tablet, Steve?
I'm using my phone.
You're using your phone. Did you call in or did you join through the Zoom app?
There's the Zoom, the online thing.
Okay, so yeah, there should be an icon to start your video, or you might see 3 dots that say more. You might need to go in there and can click start video. Otherwise, you can still join us by voice. We don't need
to. We can hear you, Steve.
Okay, well, I tell you, I just want to make 3 quick points. Well, first of all, I want to say that I think, as you can see from the presentation, Jorge and his team have put a lot of thought and care into this project, and have considered every single detail virtually, I believe. But number one, I'm pretty sure that the renovation of this building has been a long-standing Community Board 3 budget priority. So it's It's probably long overdue that we got a chance to renovate this building. And obviously it took a while to be able to get a substantial amount of funding in order to do it. The second point I want to make is that obviously this project provides a dual benefit to the public, which will have a much more pleasant surrounding and better conditions in the bathrooms. And to the Parks Department employees will have better working conditions. And the third point I want to make is that this design allows for a much better use of the space that's available in the building. And by moving the mechanical room and giving us space for a first aid room and for locker rooms for the lifeguards, it also gives us, essential backup for the pool, which actually I hope the renovation of the pool is maybe the next thing we do in this park. But we need to have appropriate space to support the pool operation. And I think for the first time, we will now have that. So those are the points I want to be able to make.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for those comments. The way we're going to do this for those, for our committee members, we're going to follow just a little bit of different, follow this a little differently. If you have a question, Michael, do you think it's best to just have people raise their hand? Because I think that can be challenging for those who are on a phone, or we just want to do it verbally?
Well, there's two ways that we can do this. I think probably the easiest way is the raise hand feature, and then we can call on people. People on the phone, you just hit *9 to raise your hand. The other thing people can do, Trevor, if you want, is they can just type their question into the chat field, and then you can just repeat it to Jorge if you want to do it that way. It's up to you.
So we're going to do all three. So as community board members first, if you have a question, I'd like to see you raise your hand, and Michael can take a note of those who have.
Michael, how do you raise your hand? What is that?
If you're on the phone, you hit *9. If you are on the Zoom app, you just hover over your picture and click raise hand, or go to the bottom menu bar and click raise hand.
I don't see raise hand. I have invite, participants, share screen, chat, record, and reactions.
Is there a more option there?
No.
All right, let's do this. It's manage participants, Val, I think would work for you, and then you click it, and then you raise your hand based on the participants box. Do you see
participant, okay.
And then if you go to yourself, underneath that, it'll say raise your hand. But if you can't do any of those, we don't have a large committee, so we can also just hear you out. But I'm going to go by those.
Oh, I see.
Raise your hand. Robin, you want to ask your question?
Hi, Jorge, thank you for that presentation. It is incredibly detailed, and I think the building's going to look beautiful. Steve, Simon, I want to reiterate what you've said. I think those 3 points are all there, as you're saying, more usable workspace for the staff and for the lifeguards, the cleaner bathrooms, and a more beautiful building. Something I want to bring up, which I brought up before with these similar buildings, is again forward thinking. I see 4 rooms dedicated to bathrooms. And I see an opportunity here, a lost opportunity to have some kind of indoor public space for community usage, for any parks programming that might happen, or any possible for the friends of the park now, or any conservancy that might come to the future. And so, given that, I want to know why we need 4 bathrooms, and can't we just again go for a gender neutral bathroom? We could eliminate 2 of these rooms and create a public indoor public space that the community can use for events.
Steve, I think that's a question for you more than for me.
Hold on, I muted Steve. He might not know how to unmute himself.
Oh, okay.
There you go, Steve. You can talk now.
Okay, very good. Well, that's an interesting question, and I think what we have here is an unusual circumstance where we have separate bathrooms available for boys and girls, basically to serve daycare centers and others who prefer to have their kids come into a separate bathroom and not be not get mixed in with others that who frequent the park, let's say. So I think we have. I mean, these are both important points. I mean, you're making a good point, but there's also a certain value in being able to preserve these separate bathrooms for kids.
Was that a request then from the community, Steve? I might have missed that then. Was that a request from these daycare centers that they have that? Is that something that the community put forth? Because I know there's also been a lot of talk with all these park buildings and in other locations in CB3 that there's no community space available indoors in any of these parks.
Well, I mean, basically it's the frequency of the use and the continued use by the daycare centers who will utilize that area of the park, but basically, foretells the fact that there's a demand for it. And we determined, I guess, that there was no reason to believe that that demand would suddenly disappear, and that we did have a certain ability to serve that need, which we don't otherwise have in almost any other building.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Trevor. I understand that. Again, I'm just going to put the gender-neutral bathroom concept out there that many public institutions are putting forth, libraries, colleges, universities, and again, the Parks Department in the city is not doing that. And I'm putting that out there again when we're thinking about the future use and user of our public spaces.
Well, we can certainly take that point back.
Okay, I don't see any other hand raised, although I do see a comment from, I believe that's Elisa. Elisa, did you want to ask a question or comment? It says, Michael, who is CB3 chair?
That's Alicia. She's unmuted now. She can talk.
Okay.
Alicia?
She's unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay, I see her. Alicia, you're on.
I think she's got
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Now you can hear me. Okay. So good evening, everyone. I just wanted to follow up a little bit and give some comment. So yeah, when I ran after school and summer camp, we actually appreciated the fact that there was a separate inside bathroom for the children to utilize when they went to the sprinklers and the swimming pool area. To say to Robin, and I do understand what you mean about having non-gender specified restrooms, but I think that would be an additional bathroom for that particular park, because that park is a haven for people that are transient and people that utilize different areas of the park, like the dog walkers and so forth and so on. I think that maybe down the line, we can look into maybe another space where another restroom could be built. But as of right now, I think as a parent, I've come to appreciate the fact that Tompkins Square always had those 4 restrooms. There was always the ones on the inside where I felt it was more secure for the children that were using the sprinklers and the swimming pool, that it was a little safer for us to be on the inside than to be on the outside of those of the restroom area. I always considered that's the children's restroom and the other one is the adult restroom. So I'm not going against what you're saying, Robin, but I'm just saying, like, I think that caregivers have really appreciated the fact that there are those inside restrooms for the children to utilize.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. I also see Carlin. I'm just going by either those who have raised their hand or those who have submitted a comment. And the next person I see, Carlin, did you want to comment, or are you just putting it in the chat for just chat, or did you want to make a comment?
No, I just wanted to say those 7 children's restrooms are great. It shields them from the homeless population there. And yeah, it was just a short comment.
Okay. I'm gonna go, I think.
Trevor, can I follow up with that?
I just want to get the comments in first. We're gonna come back to you. Ryan?
I just wanted to ask as a point of reference, do we have other children's bathrooms in CB3 in any other parks?
Steve?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. Maybe Steve would have greater experience with every facility in CB3, but not that I'm aware of. No. In fact, I can't think of another facility in the city that has.
Yeah, I'm not, nothing comes to mind. I'd have to go back. Next time I'm in the office, I'd have to check my files. But nothing that I can recall.
I also see, go ahead, Steve.
Well, that's why I think this is a unique circumstance where we can provide a service, I think, as Alicia mentioned, which, otherwise is not possible. So, we would be, I guess, reluctant to no longer be able to do this.
Okay. I see a hand raised from iPhone, and I don't know who that is.
It's me.
It's me? Who's me?
Carolyn.
Okay, Carolyn.
Okay. Tompkins Square has a whole has several different populations of people that use it. We are inundated in the warm weather with the travelers, aka punk and grunge. Okay, a lot of them are heroin users. I think that one of the reasons why Tompkins Square has maintained that specific area for the children with the sprinkler and with the separate bathrooms has a lot to do with that. There's 2 playground areas in the park, and then there's the sprinkler area in the park. There's Little Missionaries, which is on St. Mark's and between First and A that uses that. There's the little preschool across the street. And there's like how many different schools in the neighborhood? I mean, there's PS 119 that's on First Avenue and 12th. There's what was St. Bridget's through this year. And then there's PS 64, PS 63, the Earth School. There are all these different schools that bring the children to this area. And there's a real need for those bathrooms to remain the way they are. Because of we also have, I think, how many soup kitchens that feed in the park? I think I've counted 7, but Susan told me there were more. So you attract a large number of people at different times that the park ends up serving. And not everybody wants their preschool or toddlers dealing with some of those issues.
Thank you, Carolyn. And the last one I don't see any others. So we're going to go back to Robin. Robin, do you have a comment? I just don't want to get into the back and forth. I don't want people to comment or ask questions.
No, I'm not, first of all, I will be honest with you, those bathrooms are so gross, I've never taken my kids into them at all, but I'm glad they'll be fixed. So I'm not arguing against the need that everyone is saying about boys' room for kids and the daycares. But again, I'm going back to parks to say, please look at your planning when it comes to public restrooms. And, an example I give, if anyone's ever been to Venice Beach, California, there are toilet stalls that anyone can use at any given time whenever they're available. And I think we run into these problems here. First of all, I guess, we have rooms which which create hiding places for the drug addicts that you're talking about, Caroline. But again, I'm just going back to that, forward thinking about, toilets versus a room for men and a room for women. I'm just going to add that again. That's all I have to say. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. I'm just going to ask some quick questions before we see if we can get a couple questions from those who are also on Zoom but not community board members. The budget. and I know that's a big question for a lot of city projects. What's the situation with the funding here? I know this was a budget priority for CB3 for quite some time, and also from our council member. What are we looking at in terms of budget, schedule, priorities going forward?
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the project is fully funded, and God knows what's going to happen in the future with the COVID-19 situation. But we have every expectation that this funding, since this project is fully advanced, and frankly, this is one reason why we were anxious to bring it before the board as quickly as we could, because we want to see it advance, and so that we can lock it in. And so we have every expectation that this funding will remain in the budget, and we'll be able to do this project.
And the proposed schedule, keeping in mind what's going on in New York. But.
Well, first of all, with the situation right now basically affects projects of ours that are either currently in construction or were about to begin construction. This project, it still needs probably at least another 6 months of design work. Still has to go through PDC. Jorge and his team, Ray Young, will still have to do all the contract documents before it can go out for bid. Then we have a maybe a 9-month process, including the bidding and the review of the bids and award of the contract and the registration. So we're maybe 2 years away from actual. No, let me say a year and a half maybe from away from start of construction. So hopefully things will be back to normal by then.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking to see, Michael, do you see anyone who has joined and not a community board member who wants to ask a question or comment?
Well, we should tell them. So now's the opportunity for members of the community. If you have questions about this presentation before the community board votes on it, use the same raise hands function. If you're on your computer or on a tablet or phone, you just go to the participants tab and go to your name and raise your hand. If you're on a telephone only, just hit *9. You also can type it into the chat box if you'd rather do that. So I see one so far, 917. We don't know who you are, but if you can just tell us who you are before you ask your question, that would be great. I've just unmuted you.
Whoever's phone ends in 288, you did raise your hand. Did you want to make a comment or ask a question?
Yes, I have a comment. So my name is Christina Dapps Romero. Hi, everyone. I'm just on my phone, but I have been watching on Zoom, and now I'm just on the phone. And my comment or my question really is the flood zone as it is right now in our community, it goes to Avenue B. And this building is half a block away from the current floodplain, and we're putting all the utilities into the basement. I'm just wondering whether that is a smart move.
Well, we've been following the city's design guidelines for flood mitigation, and not all of the facilities are going in the basement. The condensing units are going out in the work yard. I believe there will remain a boiler and a hot water heater in the basement where they currently are. Again, we're not in the flood zone. We're not anticipated to be in the flood zone based on the new preliminary firm maps. So we feel that we are in compliance to pursue this project in this manner.
Any other? Oh, sorry.
All right, so we're going to move on. What we do not have tonight, and we're going to work on it based on the comments and the notes that I've taken, to form some sort of resolution based on bullet points. and we're gonna go over some of the things, including some of the things Robin mentioned, is upgrade existing restrooms to code, upgrade parks maintenance and operation space, add a first aid, lifeguard, locker room spaces in the building, reconstruct the interiors, to clean and partially repoint the exterior brick, new windows and doors, and new utilities, including oil to gas conversion. Also, I mentioned that this is a budget priority for CB3, and this will add a better use of space, better use of overall space for this particular building.
Trevor?
Yes.
If I may, you may also want to add that we're providing ADA accessibility.
So I'm just going to repeat what Steve said, to provide ADA accessibility, which is crucial. And I'm trying to figure out a way to incorporate some of Robin's concerns, including that parks consider to use some of this space for, to allot some of the space for community use or for community programming. And those are all the things. Steve, was there anything else? I mean, because we're really just doing this, drafting this right now.
Well, I think you basically covered the main points that I had.
Okay. I see you, Val.
But I tell you what I would like to suggest to Robin is that I will look into the possibility of using the lifeguard locker room for some community space. It would have to be outside the summer, but maybe there's a potential to make that a dual purpose space.
Okay, so I'm going to add that since it came from Steve. Thank you, Robin. I'm going to go to Val first.
Yeah, I think one of the things I didn't hear was that people or parents and daycare centers like the idea of children's restrooms. In terms of one of the whereases, I think that should be one that is highly desired, that there's a boys and a girls restroom. And so I didn't hear that. So I think that should be one of the whereases.
Okay, I'm going to figure out a way to rephrase it, but I think that's important, and we're going to put that in. Correct. And as Steve has mentioned, to repurpose the lifeguard locker room into a community space.
Well, not repurpose it. See whether or not it can be a shared use during the outside the summer.
Shared use space in the off season.
Very good. Yes.
Shared use space in off season.
Robin has her hand up as well. Trevor.
Robin?
I would even go one step further, Steve.
Oh, here we go.
I would say you could take the women's side or the men's side and still have a boys' room and a girls' room. You could divide that in half. You could divide up the men's or women's room and just make that into a bathroom, and an entire wing could become a whole community room. But that's even one step further. That's even one step further. But that's me.
Okay, well, it's a step that I'm not yet prepared to take. So I will go back and talk to people and talk to Jorge as to what the feasibility is of doing something like that. But that's a decision which I certainly couldn't make on my own.
Yeah, and I think we need to also consider the fact that many of the community members who use it and have family or children in the area really appreciate the fact that there's a separate boys and girls room. But I also see Ryan's hand raised, so I want to give Ryan a chance.
Sorry, Trevor, I wasn't saying not to do it. I'm saying I think there's plenty of room to have all those needs met, where there's an amount of space that is given up for toilets.
Gotcha. Understood. Ryan?
I just wanted to ask, so we're putting in that the lifeguard locker room area could possibly be used off season. I'm wondering if the first aid room is also a seasonal use. And anyway, that would open up more space if there were off season usage for that entire section.
Well, I'm foreseeing that there's going to be stuff in the first aid room, which is which we probably don't want to expose or have open to the public at any time. So I'm thinking that if this is possible at all, and I certainly cannot assure you that it is, it would be more likely to be possible with the lifeguards locker room.
Okay. I see some more questions. I'm gonna go to Susan first.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I've used the playgrounds there and still do. I raised a son there, and now my granddaughters are just about growing out of it. As far as the community space use inside, I've never heard anyone in the area suggest that. There is a library across the street. There are a lot of schools, as been mentioned, that use it, but the schools all have their own space. And I'm not sure who would be using it for what. Like I said, it's, as far as the people that actually use the playground, I've never heard it mentioned, and it's unfortunate that they're probably not at the meeting or participating in the meeting. But I would want to get feedback from, people that that would be using it and find out who they are.
No, and I agree with you, Susan, and we don't have the normal participation in this meeting. So I think what Steve is suggesting is he'll take a look at it. It's probably going to have to come back to us at some point, even though it's going to PDC now. But I think they just want to take a look at it. But you're right, there's not a lot of people, just because of this format, there aren't a lot of people who use the park other than committee members on this particular Zoom meeting. So that will definitely need to be something we revisit.
Yeah, I think, dual, if it could be used for more than one purpose, that certainly makes sense. But I would think twice before just taking it out for that purpose.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Val. I think this prioritizes who raised their hand first, but Val, you have another comment or question?
Yeah, just when you went to the thing about the first aid room, I'm like, I just kind of think we have to think about the safety of people and maintaining and providing safety. So I just kind of am not, I kind of think you want to maintain the first aid room, because I think playgrounds and kids is like a usual for, first aid needs. So I just kind of think, please think about not changing the size of the first aid room.
Okay. Let me just look over this.
You know what, as a matter of fact, I think that should actually be one of the whereases. The fact that they have a first aid room, that they thought about the fact that children do have a tendency to run, fall, etc. So I think that should be one of the whereases, that they did allocate space for a first aid room.
Okay. And I do have that in the goals, but I think we should probably expand that language a bit, because we just have add first aid. But Ryan, you're taking notes in this, correct?
Yes, I am. Can I just respond quickly? I thought I heard Steve say that it was first aid just for the lifeguards. And so I thought it was a first aid room that was only being used when the pool was open. Is it a first aid room that's able to be used all year round?
No, I don't believe so. I think you're right. I think it's only used during the pool season. But I don't see this as being a room that would be available the rest of the year to the general public. There are things I assume that are in that room that we want to make sure are not being tampered with. So I think it would remain locked when it's not being used during the summers.
I see.
Okay, 2 more, and then we're going to try and get this resolution together, or at least add some bullet points. Carolyn, and then Susan.
It's my understanding from what I've seen in the past is that the entranceway into the pavilion area, there's a sign that says basically it's the area where the sprinkler is reserved for children with an adult. That's the only way an adult can go back there. And usually the pavilion area is used by the staff. So it's not like there's great public access going through the pavilion area into the children's play area. And that's something that you need to think about as well. So unless Parks is going to change that, the suggestion about the tennis, the locker room for the lifeguard, that has access to the outside, to the public area. And it doesn't infringe on having people go into an area that's reserved for children.
Thank you, Carolyn. For that particular request, I think Steve's going to take it back and take a look at it since we have some time on this, but I do think there needs to be a little bit more public input on that particular request. But I'm going to go to Susan. Carlin has said disregard, so I'm going to go to Susan again.
Okay, I just wanted to say, as far as first aid for the kids, you know, there's often not staff there. It's often all locked up, so that just wouldn't be available. You know, it's not something like any adult can just walk in and use it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to read over to the extent that I can. Ryan, you want to read over what you have so that I know that we match? I can always add if you didn't catch everything. Sorry to put you on the spot. Or do you want me to read it?
You need to read it.
Okay. Upgrade existing restrooms to code. Upgrade parks maintenance and operation space. Add first aid. And Val, I know we need to change that language, but add first aid, lifeguard locker room spaces in the building. Reconstruct the interiors, clean and partially repoint the exterior brick, new windows and doors, new utilities including oil to gas conversion, and a better overall use of the space. Keeping in mind this is a CB3 budget priority. Steve, you told me something and I forgot where I wrote it.
ADA accessibility.
That's it. I can't read my own handwriting. ADA accessibility. Ryan, did I leave out anything? Other than Parks will take a look at the possibility of using the lifeguard locker room dual purpose area during the off season, and it will involve getting some community input as to whether this is a request or whether this is something that the neighbor or the users of the park.
Trevor, what about what Val said?
What?
That was Josie. She said, what about what Val said? I believe it's about the first aid thing. That's already been.
First aid thing. I'm just saying I got that in there. I just need better language on it. We're just drafting this right now. These are the bullet points that we're going to vote on in a couple seconds. And I mentioned to Val that I just had add first aid, but we're going to expand on that language somewhat. Okay. Val, do you have a question or do you have, your hand is raised?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think what they said was that the lifeguard would use that space, because what I thought about, you know, I was thinking that in terms of staff, the staff would use the space to address issues. And I know that most lifeguards, I think, have to take CPR and first aid. So they would know what to do with whatever the equipment was in the room. So I'm not sure how you want to write it, but, you know, that I think is somewhat the issue, that we do want a first aid space for somebody who's trained to use it, for staff that's trained to use it. Because, you know, like I said, I think lifeguards have to take first aid, CPR, and you want trained staff to have access to the space. That's it.
Correct. And I think to Steve's point that would be used, that would be designated as the first aid place and be locked during the off season, primarily because of the items that would be located in it.
Trevor?
Yes.
Val also made the point of saying that there seemed to be a lot of community support for retaining the feature of the children's bathrooms.
Perfect. I'm glad you typed that in.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I don't see any other.
Wait.
Go ahead, Val.
I'm looking for. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I think one of the points though with the lifeguard is the fact that you have staff that can utilize the equipment in the first aid room. You know, I just think that's a point. Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to expand on that language, and I agree with you. I'm just trying to get the bullet points of what we talked about so that we don't forget it. But I think we need to expand on the lifeguard portion. That being said, with those bullet points, and I'm going to go show of hands. Michael, what's the best way to do this?
I think if we are voting on a resolution, we probably should do a roll call vote again like we did attendance. That'll be the easiest and most accurate way.
So Ryan's going to do a roll call. We're voting on, well, we need a motion to approve the bullet points. So does anyone want to propose a motion?
Wait, well, Trevor, I don't quite understand what is like the beginning statement.
You're absolutely right, Val. I'm trying to. We're writing this resolution on the fly, and we're voting to approve. You're absolutely right. Voting to approve the Tompkins Square Park proposed renovation.
Okay.
Proposed field house reconstruction. Steve, would that be the correct title?
Yeah, we're referring to it as the field house. Yes, so it's the you would be hopefully voting to approve the proposed plan for the renovation of the Tompkins Square Park field house.
Okay.
All right. So this is a motion to approve the field. Okay.
Motion to approve with the bullet points I just mentioned.
So Trevor, I would like to make the motion to approve the design.
I'll second that.
Carlin seconds it. Ryan, can you do a roll call?
Yes. Trevor?
Yes.
Kay? David Adams?
Yes.
Yaron Altman?
Yes.
Carlin Chan?
Yes.
Ryan Gillum? Yes. Valentina Jones? Valentina Jones?
Michael, can you unmute her?
I can't. Val, you have to unmute yourself.
The comeback, Michael Marino?
Yes.
Carolyn Ratcliffe?
Yes.
Robin Chattel?
Was there, I'm sorry, did I miss, was there something in there about looking into community space, or that's not part of this? That was just an aside in the resolution.
It is.
Steve mentioned that he's going to take a look, so it's in there.
So yes.
Josephine Gonzalez?
Yes. Yes.
Valentina Jones, are you there? Do you vote yes? Okay.
We're gonna, because we need to say approve it. Val, if you're there, or I don't know if you're on a phone, can you type in a response?
To unmute is *6, Val.
Okay. All right. I guess we're just going to vote without her being present. Ryan, and if she comes back, we'll probably add her vote, but I don't see her response anywhere. So unless Val, you can't unmute yourself. All right, let's do this. That was the only agenda item.
Hi, this is Val. I don't know what I did, so my vote is yes.
Okay, thank you. Mute that number. Okay, thank you. Ryan, you have all the votes, correct?
Yes.
All right, so the motion passes with that vote. We do have, and I don't know if trying trying to see who's left on the phone because I thought we might be able to get a parks report before we close the meeting. Steve, are you still on?
Yes.
If you want to give us a brief update as far as projects in our area, and I know everything is going to change, but you know.
Well, actually, I should have been prepared for this, and I'm sorry that I'm not. But basically, most of our capital projects that were in construction have been suspended. So I think that's true for the Sauer Park project, for instance. And I can't recall off the top of my head what else we have right now in Board 3, but with few exceptions, most of our projects were deemed to be non-essential, and construction has been suspended during this current period. And projects that were due to begin construction have basically been delayed. But others that were in the pipeline, such as this Tompkins Square Fieldhouse, have not been so affected. So you know, we've closed playgrounds, we've closed down tennis courts, we've removed the rims from basketball courts, and basically our athletic fields are still open, and our multi-purpose play areas are still open, and we're trying to monitor them to make sure that people are observing the social distancing guidelines. But you know, a lot of our spaces, unfortunately, have closed out of, I guess, a concern that people were not following the social distancing guidelines.
Okay, thank you. I see a question from Susan.
No, ignore it. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I should mention that McKinley Playground, which was about to begin construction, has been. We were going to start it on. We were going to start it today, and it's been delayed until May the 4th at this point. But who's to say that it may not be delayed again? But so the official start date right now for McKinley Playground is May the 4th. But I don't know whether that's going to be a true date.
Steve, is parks considered essential construction or infrastructure?
Which one?
Is parks, these projects, that ones that can.
Well, no, I mean, very few of our parks were deemed to be essential. Most of them were put into the non-essential category, and that's why construction has been suspended on those that were already underway. So when I get back to the office, which I hope to do in the next couple of days, I'll check the current list, and I'll send something off to you if there's any variance with what I've just said to you.
Okay, appreciate. I see Elisa has a question.
Well, no, that's actually me. Alicia dropped off. Yes,
right.
I just had a question about, I have two questions actually. One is, have you heard anything about possible closure of like exercise equipment areas in parks, especially East River Park? Like I know the one by Houston Street, when I was in East River Park last week, there was probably like 25 guys in there working out together, and none of them were practicing social distancing. And then the other question I have, and this one might be a little bit harder for you to answer, is because we don't know sort of when this will end and when things when construction will start again. But when that does happen, is Parks planning on communicating what the new timelines are on projects that were stalled?
To your first question, the fitness equipment situation is definitely a concern of ours, and it's something that is under discussion. And I would not be surprised if we ended up closing down those areas as well. But I think we're looking at that right now. So there may be a decision on that. You know, things are in flux to a great degree, and you know, decisions are coming down day by day. So it wouldn't surprise me if something occurred in that vein very shortly. On the second point, yes, as soon as projects are back up and running, we will let you know what the amended revised schedules are. Certainly for projects that have yet to begin, let's say McKinley begins May the 4th. That's a 12-month project. It'll presumably be completed by the May of 2021. The Comfort Station project, which also at McKinley, was not going to take. I think we were convinced we could do it within 6 months. And that's also been delayed. Hopefully that'll start up at the same time the overall playground project starts up.
Thank you. I see 3 more, and then we're going to sort of wrap this up. I'm going to name them. It's Susan, Carlin, and then Robin, and then I just have one question. So Susan?
Okay, thank you. As far as McKinley, if it could start, it would be really good to do it while the school's closed, because Steve is aware of all the difficulties it was causing for the school. So I just wanted to mention that. The same thing with the Comfort Station. With Tompkins Square Park, I want to thank Parks for continually closing more and more areas. It's a shame, but people were really upset, even writing in the blogs, about the lack of social distancing in all the courts. Have you closed up the skateboard court now, Steve?
Well, we have closed 4 skate parks in the borough.
I mean, specifically in Tompkins Square, because there were a lot of complaints about the use of that court.
Well, that's not, that's a good point. That wasn't on the list because it's not considered an official skate park. But I will bring that back.
Yeah, it's really a shame. I don't know why that park is so misused, but even I will tell you that whole zip code of 10009 actually has more complaints than anywhere else in Manhattan about people not complying with social distancing. So I think the park is just part of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Carlin?
Yeah, hi, Steve. Hope you're keeping safe. Hope everybody else is keeping safe. This is not a new construction project or capital improvement, but I'm talking about a safety concern down at Columbus Park, Foley Square Park, Thomas Paine Park, and also the fountain area of Thomas Paine Park. The lighting is non-existent. We have no lighting down here. 85% of the lights in Columbus are out. 70% of the lights in Foley Square Park are out, and there are no lights at all on Thomas Paine or that fountain area. I don't know if DOT is sending out doing any repairs during this time, but can you take another look into that? It's been a year almost. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're saying that for a whole year, lights have been out in all 3 of those?
Yes, basically they've been going out, one after another, but it's been a good 6 to 7 months where there have been no lighting. Okay.
All right. Well, we would certainly talk to DOT about that, and if Susan could also take it up with DOT, that would be helpful. We will pursue it.
We'll do that tomorrow.
Okay. I don't know that. I can't tell you whether or not the DOT contractors are working right now. I would hope that this is considered as an essential service.
Yeah, especially when it gets a little dark here, the park isn't locked up until roughly 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and we have a lot of people released from the MDC here that are hanging around in this park right now.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's stay in touch on this, Colin.
Okay.
That sounds like a plan. I'll send you an email. I spoke to Castro when he was down here a few months ago about it, but it's a DLP thing.
Okay, well, keep me in the loop on this, and send me an email.
I'll shoot you an email on it. Thanks.
Okay.
One last one from Robin.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Steve. I hope that COVID-19 hasn't hit the parks community too hard. And on that note, I'm wondering if the Parks is still going to continue to bring on its seasonal employees at the same numbers, or what the plan is for that?
I don't know. I mean, everything seems to be up in the air right now, and I don't think we have an answer to that question.
Thank you.
I mean, I appreciate that question, and I appreciate that thought, because the seasonal employees are critical to our operations. And during the summer, our busiest season, we need those seasonal employees. But the overall budget picture right now is very much in limbo, and I don't know that we've been given any clear direction. I will check on that, and if I find out anything, I'll certainly let Trevor and you know.
Thanks.
Thank you. Just one last question to follow up on what Robin said. We've heard numbers from the Transit Authority, the Fire Department, and other city agencies. I was wondering if you had any indication of how the parks staff, including the frontline workers, are being affected.
I do have those statistics, but I can't get to them while I'm on the phone with you. But we certainly have had a reduced workforce. In Manhattan, I think we may have I don't know, we may have as many as 15 or 20% who have called out sick. We do get reports every now and then of some of our employees who have been who have the illness and who have now been quarantined. So, and I think we may have suffered a death of one of our employees. So again, I'm sorry I'm not prepared tonight, but I'll get you that information.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I was going to end it, but I see Val has one question, and we're going to end it on that. Val?
Yeah, in terms of your employees, I understand that you have employees that go out to the parks and I guess disassemble people if they see people. They go monitor. They go and they monitor the social distancing.
Yes.
Are these people all? Do they all have masks? Do they all have appropriate masks for going out there?
We have as of last week, the beginning of last week, we gave masks to all of our employees, all of our field employees.
When you say
I'm just looking over this. Okay, it looks like, Val, did you want to finish real quick?
Yeah, you know, what do you mean by masks? Because some of what I've heard from people, to me, sounds very inappropriate with how they're doing masks. Because if you look at how the CDC says you should deal with masks, you shouldn't be wearing one that you went and you talk to somebody or they talk to you, then that mask should come off. So
it should not come off. I have worn this mask, and I can talk to people through the mask. That you should not. We have told our people. I'm pretty sure we've told our people you do not take off the mask when you're talking to people, because that's.
I'm not saying when you talk to them. I'm saying if they have talked to you and supposedly contaminated the outside of your mask. That's what I'm talking about. You know, I'm saying one of the things that I've heard from people is the fact that they don't have enough protective equipment for the things that they're doing. I'm not saying they take them off while they're talking.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
I heard people say that they take off the mask at some point and put it in a brown bag.
Right.
Wear disposable masks more than one time.
Right. Yeah. I don't. So your question is, how many masks have we given to people?
Right. Are you giving them appropriately for people going out monitoring people, which I'm not exactly sure what they do to monitor them. But if their monitoring is that they go up and they some kind of way approach people or people approach them, I don't quite get what it is. I'm just saying, is it appropriate? Because a lot of people are talking about the fact that the PPE is not appropriate. So I would just hope that you look at appropriateness. That's all.
All right, well, that's a very good point, and I'll check on that. That's a valid point. Certainly, we're not as vulnerable, let's say, as the people working in the hospitals or at EMS who are in daily contact with people who have the virus. But this is a legitimate concern, and I'll certainly look into it. I know we gave out thousands of masks. I don't know how many each employee was given.
Okay, but I also think that's a citywide issue with all government agencies, but not just parks, but other people who interact.
No, I would just like to say that we have redeployed, I forget how many people, maybe it's 90 people in the agency to serve, who are not otherwise working. Let's say people in recreation centers that are now closed, others whose jobs are, have basically been curtailed because of this crisis. So we've reassigned them to be what we call ambassadors. And so they are going out, in addition to our Parks Enforcement Patrol, they are going out to areas where there is some concern about whether social distancing guidelines are being observed. And they are talking to people who, to explain to them why they have to adhere to the guidelines. So that's a first line measure that we're taking.
Okay. On that note, we're going to close this up. Steve, thank you, and we're going to all follow your advice to stay safe and to use masks when we go out. We need to adjourn this meeting, so I need
can I just thank the committee for its support of another one of our projects, which I believe is going to be a substantial benefit to both you and the agency. So we appreciate your support.
We appreciate your support also, because we're sending you a how to use Zoom. You just got the link, so you can learn how to use the video, so we can see you when you're talking. You should have that now. Very quick guide. It's about 2 minutes long.
Okay, you're probably better off not seeing me.
Okay. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
And don't leave the meeting yet, committee members, because
Seconded.
Right, and I think we're probably going to be a little lenient on this roll call. But Ryan, if you want to do a roll call.
All right, I'll see you guys.
Okay, Anthony. Ryan, you want to do a roll call?
Yep. Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Kay Webster. David Adams.
Yes.
Yaron Altman.
Yes.
Carlin Chan.
Yes.
Ryan Gillum. Yes. Valentina Jones.
Yes.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Carolyn Ratcliffe.
Yes.
Robin Chattel.
Yes.
Josefina Villas. Josefina Villas.
Josie, unmute yourself. We know you're there.
Star 6, Josie.
What I'm doing anymore.
There we go.
We got you.
Okay.
Is that it, Ryan?
Yep, that's it.
All right, folks, I don't know what next month looks like, but just be very, check the website, because I can't always emails. We all have a lot of stuff going on, but the website will be the most up-to-date as to what's going on with our meetings. Everyone stay safe, stay indoors, and wear a mask if you go outdoors.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Michael and Ryan, for being the support.
Y'all.
Night. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.